Hello, and thank you for joining us for the BPM Change Management PRR Review Monthly Meeting. My name is Ryan Ayer, representing the Customer Readiness team here at the ISO, and I will be facilitating today's web conference. Today's call is being recorded. These recordings are for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. As a reminder, these monthly calls are structured to stimulate an honest dialogue and engage different perspectives. While we welcome comments and questions, please remember to keep the comments professional and respectful. We will be taking questions throughout the call today. If you are dialed in by phone only and not on the WebEx, you can enter the question queue at any time by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. If you're connected audio through the WebEx platform, please use the raise hand feature located above the chat box on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Please introduce yourself before asking your question. If you need technical assistance during today's call, please send a chat message to the event producer. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the proposed revision requests that are in the initial recommendation or stage of the process. Today we'll be discussing 9 PRRs, 2 are in the initial stage, 6 are in the recommendation stage, and 1 PRR is on hold. All PRRs were submitted by the ISO. The purpose of BPMs is to set forth business practices that implement the ISO tariff. The ISO conducts a yearly policy initiative roadmap process to consider and rank initiatives. Policy changes submitted through the PRR process will be referred to the Policy Initiative Roadmap process, and each area in a BPM is based on enabling language in the ISO tariff. The PRR process cannot be used to introduce changes that are not supported by the existing tariff authority. The first BPM today that we are covering today is for credit management and market clearing, PRR 1554. This PRR is in the initial stage, and Christina will be covering this one. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Good afternoon, everybody. PRR 1554 is in regards to minor revision to Section 6.2 of the EAL, or Estimated Aggregate Liability Component, specifically the extrapolated component. It was simply just language cleanup to be in alignment with the updated settlements timeline from a couple of years ago, essentially removing the language for the month-end statements that specifically states initial and recalculation statements. There were no initial comments, and the initial comment period expired on March 12th of this year, and our next step will be to post our recommendation. Are there any questions on PRR 1554?
And as a reminder,
hearing none, I will. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, as a reminder, if you do have a question, please remember to raise your hand if you're on the WebEx or by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks. All right, moving on. The next BPM that we are covering is for Rules of Conduct Administration, PRR number 1555, which is in the initial stage. Angelica will be speaking to this PRR, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. So PRR 1555 regarding the Rules of Conduct Enhancements Phase 1 is put in place. The BPM changes are in support of tariff changes related to Phase 1 of the ROC enhancements effort. We didn't receive any initial comments. Again, the comment period expired March 12th, and our next step is to post the recommendations. Does anybody have any questions about PRR 1555?
All right, moving on. The next set of BPMs that we are covering is for market operations, PRR 1548, 1552, and 1547, which are in the recommendation stage. Michael, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Good morning, it's Michael Martin in operations. So starting with 1548, this is the establishment of a new wheel-through process. Go ahead and move to the next slide. As part of the TSMSP, that's Transmission Service Market Scheduling Priorities Project. This was the first BPM addition for this project, and we expect another, by the way, update in the next week. For more information on this project, we have lots of documents on our website under stakeholder process. Again, it's the TSMSP project. This PRR specifically was put into effect when it was submitted so we could start that long-term high priority process. We didn't receive any comments on it, and that comment period did expire. So we're at the next step, which is to post the final decision on this PRR.
All right. Any questions? Any questions on PRR 1548? All right, moving on.
Okay, so PRR 1552, this is a clarification on the number of historical days using the Mosaic Quanto regression. This is for the determination of flexible ramp requirements. This is the existing process, but what our short-term forecast team that develops these requirements is clarifying is additions, improvements to this process, including not using date types or changing the number of historical days and date types in this calculation. So additional information, we did receive a question outside of this is when will you implement this? And we're expecting mid-April or a week after this is approved. We will also provide notification through either the Market Participant Forum, MPPF, and a market notice. And I think that's it. The same comment period, and the next step is to post the final. Any questions on this PRR? Okay, so next PRR is PRR 1547, a clarification to the AS state of charge constraint and bid cost recovery methodology. We added conditions for when energy awards may not be eligible for bid cost recovery. We did receive comments, second round of comments from PG&E, which might be on the call today. In looking at the response, we have not provided a written response yet, but the questions were based around understanding of the use of binding intervals for this ASLC flag, and PG&E also, I think, has questions on understanding how this works. Is there any questions on this that we can address at this time?
All right. Thank you, Michael. The next BPM.
I'm sorry. We do have one hand raised.
Yeah, this is Michael Volpe with PG&E. So will you be providing a response to our questions?
So we can provide a response, or if it's an understanding question that we can answer here, we have a couple other folks on this call.
Well, you know, we submitted these comments a while ago, and you know, they're also asking about tariff implications. So it's not so much an understanding. The first question is an understanding question, which is regards to a BRS specification. So that would be an understanding question. But the other two questions are more tariff concerns.
So I can address the tariff comment. The tariff says that, the ISO should not pay bid cost recovery when uneconomic dispatches are undertaken to support ancillary services. And so I think some of the confusion here is that the advisory intervals have the ancillary service in the future that the binding interval has to prepare for. So if I was sitting here at 10:45 a.m., that 10:45 RTD run looks out to 11 o'clock in hour-ending 12. And if there's an ancillary service in hour-ending 12 that the storage resource does not have the state of charge to support, I have to start undertaking uneconomic dispatches now to support that future AS that is seen in the advisory. And that's the only reason for these uneconomic dispatches is to support the future AS. The optimization would not otherwise issue those.
So that gets to my question. So all advisory intervals that cause an ASSOC flag correspond to binding intervals?
The binding interval is going to be the one with the flag that gets sent to the downstream systems, yes.
Because the way I read the change and your response to the initial comments was that because they have the ability to drive an uneconomic dispatch. So is it having the ability to drive an uneconomical dispatch, or will they 100% every time drive that dispatch? Because our understanding of advisory intervals is that they may or may not.
But so this is Danny with the ISO, Michael. If the constraint is binding in an advisory interval, we are optimizing the advisory and the binding intervals all together so that there would be potentially an impact that gets reflected back into the binding interval. So, I mean, absent that constraint binding in one of the advisory intervals, I would reasonably expect that the entire sequence of advisory intervals and the financially binding interval to be some level of different.
Yeah, I thanks for that. I think it really speaks to having the data, the importance of having the data to back this up, and we haven't seen any data. So that's why we keep entering comments, because we haven't seen any data for this. So that was the second question of ours. Back to the first question of ours is that is the current ASSOC flag working as designed? So are there intervals where this flag should be coming up in the binding interval that are actually not? It's not being flagged. So setting aside the advisory issue, is it currently working as designed?
It was broken for some time after July 1st, the binding one, and we have a plan to backfill that. But it has been corrected as of, I think, the beginning of this year, or early this year, in 2024.
Okay. And can someone speak to the BRS? Is that the correct BRQ that I referenced in the comments?
Okay, we'll have to adjust that in the comments.
Yeah, I just want to identify which actual implementation item the changes made to you.
So, and in our comments, we'll address your comment about whether the advisory intervals have the ability 100% to drive the uneconomical dispatch in the binding interval.
Thanks. And, you know, our last comment really had to do with the FERC filing, where it was made kind of, you know, pretty explicit, saying that change that was made will not affect any other intervals. And you know, here we are talking about advisory intervals, you know, the scope kind of expanding. So I don't know if you have a comment on that or not.
You know, we'll address that comment.
And I would go back to that original point of like, there's one binding interval, but there's a number of advisory intervals, and there is a influence on all of the intervals if a constraint binds in any of them. So I don't think we would necessarily want to exclude the constraint binding in an advisory interval and influencing the outcome of a binding interval just because it's an advisory interval. It's kind of an artifact of the multi-interval optimization.
I see. Yeah, certainly if that correlation was 100%, we would have concerns as well. It's just, you know, without the data, we can't. And we're just taking your word for it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. What we will commit to is a written response back to you. In fact, I'll even post it back on this PRR for everyone to see.
Great, thank you, Michael. Okay, so moving on here, the next BPM that we are speaking on is the BPM Change Management, PRR number 1550, which is in the recommendation stage. Nicole, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. PR 1550 was just to correct some formatting and links to our BPM for change management, bringing the language, excuse me, up to date and make it more current. There were no recommendation comments and the comment period expired on March 12th, and the next step is to post the final decision. Are there any comments or questions on this PRR? All right, back to you, Ryan.
All right, great, thank you. The next BPM we are covering is for definitions and acronyms, PR 1551, which is in the recommendation stage. Jacqueline, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi, good morning, thank you. Yes, we are doing our semi-annual review to update the definitions and acronyms BPM. As a reminder, this populates based on all of the updates that have already been made to the previous BPMs through their previous reviews and approvals, as well as updates that have gone through the CAISO Tariff Appendix A. No comments were received during the first period, and we are posting for final decision today. Are there any questions?
All right, we'll go ahead and move on. The next BPM that we're covering is for the transition planning process, PR 1553, which is in the recommendation stage. Robert, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's Robert Sparks. I'm sorry, there's a little typo on the slide. It's the transmission planning process, not as opposed to the transition planning process. But anyway, so we covered this BPM change in the last call. He did get one question in writing. I'm not sure there's much else. Really, the purpose of the change is to ensure that when generators are testing their units for real and reactive capability limits for modeling purposes, that they coordinate those tests with the transmission operators, especially the reactive power test, so that if high voltage or low voltage conditions are encountered, the operators can take steps to try and counteract, I suppose, those high voltage conditions so they can continue with their test of full boost on the voltage or full buck on the voltage. Anyway, we covered that in the last call. I don't have anything else.
All right, great. Are there any questions on this PRR? All right, moving on. The last BPM is for generator interconnection and deliverability allocation procedures, PR 1545. This PRR is currently on hold pending additional internal review, but we have Dawn on here, so I wasn't sure if there were any updates to share.
The only update is that this topic is going to be moved to the IPE process 2023 track 3. So anybody that's interested in it should move on over to the stakeholder initiative called IPE 2023 and follow track 3.
All right, great. Any questions on PRR 1545? I don't see any hands raised. All right. The next BPM meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 23rd at 11 a.m. Pacific. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at bpm_cm@kaiso.com. And that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you all.